So today, guys, we're going to be doing a Redux tutorial series. I'm going to be making this shopping cart application here on the right using Redux. There's going to be no use states involved whatsoever. There's going to be no backend. It's just going to be very simple. You've got your theme selector, light and dark. We can add items to the cart. We can remove items from the cart. And I'm just going to use this as a basis to explain what Redux is, how to set it up, how you can start using it in your applications. So let's jump right into into what is Redux. So it's a state management library for React and TypeScript. So usually in React we use useState or useReducer. The problem with useState is if you have a large application with lots of pieces of state, it becomes messy passing down the states, keeping track of each state in all of your different components. So let's say you have, this is your parent component here. So you have your parent component. This is the entry, say this is the entry point for your where you're making your API calls into a database. So let's draw a database here. So here's our backend, let's say. So the parent is calling to the backend, and the backend is returning data back to the parent here. So let's just write this in here. So now we have our data here in the parent component. So let's say we have children of this parent. So we have two children. Give me an arrow. Right. So we have two children. They're both, let's say they're both using a certain state. So this is, say, to make it simple, let's say counter state is equal to 0. Now let's say we have in this child component, we're passing down the counter state. Oh, get rid of that. Sorry, this Scala draw is a little bit more difficult. So let's say we have our counter state here, and we have it over here. What happens when we have a button over here in this child that changes the counter state? Say we have a button that pauses the counter. Let's write the button in here. Let's just say changes count. Well, we're using counter state over here in this child. So we need a way to set state, because the state and set state is defined in our parent. All we're doing is passing the actual state itself to the button. So we'll also need to pass set state to this child in order to update it back here. So let's say you have another child of this component here. And let's say this makes a call to the database, receives its answer, and now we need to set the count again. As you can see, this is called prop drilling, where you're just sending to prop to prop to prop, setting the set state back up. Let's say you're setting count here. You call set state, it goes back to this child and then goes back to the parent. From there, the parent will set the state, and then it needs to send the new state back down to this child, because there's nothing linking these children except for this parent. Now let's say the alternative for Redux, it's a state management library. So it's like a client-side state database where, let me draw a square for this one. You have all of your pieces of state. So let's say you have count state. Let's say you have color state, theme state, user logged in. So we have all of our pieces of state here in like client-side database. Now let's say we have our parent component. We have our child. Say we have 2 more children. So let's say we want to use the color state. To get, I'm actually going to use a pencil for this one. So we want to use color state in our parent. We also want to use it in each child, because if we have a color scheme in our app, we want to be able to use the same color scheme. Maybe it's on a click of a button like light and dark theme button. We want to be able to access that from any component in our application. We also want to be able to set it from any area in our application. So let's say we'll use a red marker for set color state. So we have our color state and we have our method for setting color state. We want to be able to set it from the parent, from the click of a button. We want to be able to set it from our child. We want to be able to set it from either that child. So there's no passing state up and down anymore. There's no prop drilling. And let's say if you have, I don't know, 100, 200 pieces of state, you have clearly defined store, and each slice, they're broken down into slices. So you would have a count slice, a color slice, a theme slice, and a user logged in slice. They'll all be defined in their own file. They'll all have their own methods associated with them, and a reference to each one of these reducers or slices will all be held in a centralized store. So you have your store. Go back to black there. So you'll have your store. Defined store with defined reducers, slices, wrapped around the entry point of app.js or index.js. So the entry point of, let me show you here. So for me, it's main.js. So here on your create root, and it's wrapped around your app, which is the entry point. You're going to wrap the store around that app component so that anywhere in the app has access to that store. So now that we've defined that, let's get into setting up the project and let's build this shopping cart project. So let's say you've installed Redux and Redux Toolkit. The first step you're going to want to do is create your store. So we're going to need a new file, store.js. Do our imports here. So we're going to import React from React. Import configure store, which is our helper for setting up our store, which contains all of our different slices. That's coming from Redux Toolkit. And then you will, as you, do I have that right yet? So as you create your different reducers, you will import them into this file, and then you will add them to your store component here that we're going to create. So store equals configure store. It's an object. It's going to take a reducer argument, and inside the reducer, you're going to pass the name of each of your different slices, which I'll show you the slices in a second. And then you will you'll link them to a reducer, so you'll import them. And then you put the name and then the name of the import here inside configure store. So now that we have our store, we're going to go to our main component here. We're going to import provider from React Redux. We're going to wrap our app in a provider. We're going to pass our store. So store equals store. We need to import our store that we just created. All right, so now that we have our store set up, there's going to be a few different slices that we need for this app. So if I go into the first one, let's just set up the initial app first. So need a div, and I believe I already have the, so yeah, outer div. Then inside it I have a top div. So let's put borders around these just so I can see what I'm working with. So yeah, the outer div wraps around the whole page, and then the top div should just be at the top for holding the cart and the theme selector. So we have this black 1 pixel solid. Okay, so now we have our top div and we have our outer div. So inside top div, we're going to have a theme selector, light and dark, and then we're going to have a shopping cart component there. So let's create those components. So new file. I'm going to call it theme selector. Use a snippet for RFC. So in this component, we are going to render 2 buttons. They need to go in a row, so they need to go side by side instead of stacked on top of each other. So we're going to, oh sorry, so it's display flex, and it should automatically put them in a row. So let's do 2 buttons. I'm using Material UI for my components. So if you want to install that, it's just MUI/material. So we have 2 buttons. These are going to be used to set the theme, light or dark. So now we need to import this theme selector into our home component. Where did I default that? We're going to put it inside our top div. So now we have our light and our dark. At the moment they don't do anything. So let's go back to our theme selector. And the first thing we need to do is create a slice for theme. So we'll go into slices, new file, and create a theme slice. We need a function called create slice from the toolkit. Now we need to define our initial state. So this is the same as when in classic use state, when you first define your state, you'll give it an initial state. So for example, it'll be like use state, and then if it's a counter, you'll initialize it to 0. In our case, we're going to give it a name of team and initialize it to light. So now when we create our slice here, we're going to pass in our initial state, and then that's going to be this how it keeps track of what each piece of state is for this. So I'll show you here now. So we're passing in initial state. So each slice could have multiple pieces of state. So we have team, but we could also have, like, I don't know, anything like color, black. We could have size, 20 pixels. We can have any number of pieces of state as we pass in initial state, and then to update those states, we're going to pass in our reducers, and then we're going to define our methods name. So let's say change theme is going to be a method for updating the theme. So we're going to pass in state and an action. Our action is going to contain a payload sent from the client side, or from the user's action basically, and then we can decide which piece of the initial state we want to change. So we're doing state dot theme. If we wanted to change the color, we would write state dot color. If we wanted to change the size, we would write in state dot size. But state dot theme equals action dot payload. So the payload from these buttons. So say when we click one of these buttons, light or dark, the payload's going to be either dark or light. It's going to call this change theme function. We're passing in the state, which is this. We're looking for the property within that state, which is theme. It's currently set to light. We're going to change it to action.payload, which is either going to be dark or light. So this will become theme light once we click on this button. I'm going to get rid of these. So the only piece of state we're keeping track of in this theme slice is our overall theme. So it's either going to be light or dark. So we have our change theme function there. Now we need to export a couple things. So we're going to export our function for changing the theme because we're going to want to use that within our components. Theme slice dot actions. And then we're going to export the overall reducer, theme slice dot reducer. So basically we're exporting this part. So just this reducer, so name theme. So once we import our reducer into our store, because now we have to connect it to our store in order for the app components to have use of it. So we need to import our reducer. So import theme reducer from slices. Now we're going to call it theme and connect it here to what we just imported, theme reducer. So now we have access to this slice within our store. We also exported the methods. So each method needs to be exported on their own using theme.actions, theme slice.actions, so that when we come into our components, we can use something called a dispatch, which I'll show you in a second. We use a dispatch to call these methods. All right. So we have it connected to our store. So we can get rid of that for now. We can get rid of app CSS for now. And we can get rid of main for now. So really, we need to use that change theme method that we just created. We need to use that in our theme selector. So I'm going to import it. I'm going to import change theme. we also need to import something called use dispatch, which is a hook that allows you to call the different methods. So we can't just write, you know, change theme and then whatever, like a usual method that you're importing. You need to write, I'll show you. So const dispatch is equal to use dispatch. So we're pulling the hook into our component. And now if we want to call this change theme method, we need to write it out like something like dispatch change theme, and then you need to pass your payload. I know I messed up typing that, but you need to pass your payload into the argument so that when it reaches the theme slice, it's going to reach this reducer and it's going to reach the change theme. It needs to know what the action that payload is. So the action is basically the action of calling the method, but the payload is going to be whatever we pass in when we call it. So we're using dispatch here. So now each of our buttons can now receive an onClick. And we can call it dispatch, this function, change theme. We need to pass a payload. So for the light button, we're going to pass the payload of light. And for the dark button, we pass the argument of dark. So these buttons are now updating the state, but the state isn't doing anything yet because all it is it's just a string saying light. It's not actually corresponding with anything yet. So let me show you how to pull the state into the component now. So we've successfully updated the state. Now we need to use useSelector to pull the state out of the slice or the store, however you want to think about it, and use it or display it in your component. So we have useSelector. We need to give it a variable name. So we'll call it current state equals useSelector. And think of it as a way of just selecting a piece of state out of your slice, and you need to define which slice and which piece of state in that slice you want to pull out. So we're passing state in. We're going to use state dot. This is where you define which slice you want to use. So ours is called theme, I believe. So where you'll find the name of your slice is here. So that useSelector, it's reaching out to the store. It's asking, do you have a slice named theme? And it's asking, do you have a property named theme? So state.theme.theme. I probably could have picked a better name for those variables, but state.theme.theme is going to get us to whatever the current theme prop is set to. So now we have our current state. Let's display it here in our top bar. So to use a variable in JSX, so you can't just write now current state like that because it'll treat it as a string. You need to wrap it in curly braces. That's going to tell the JSX to treat it as JavaScript, a variable. And now you can see we have our state up here, and it's changing from light to dark. So we're setting and we're retrieving state successfully. Now let's I'll leave that there for now. So now let's go back to our home page. We're updating the theme from light to dark, but that's not very useful at the moment. We can do a lot more. Let's create a shopping cart component. So we have theme selector, so let's create a shopping cart. Call it cart.jsx. Use our snippet, which has taken a long time to come up today for some reason. Right, so now we have our cart set up. So in our cart, let's just actually So we have a style of width 4em, display flex, because we want it to appear in a row. And we want everything to be centered, so we're going to align items center, and justify content center as well. So I think all I need is, see, I'm trying to go off this by memory. So I think all I need is the shopping cart icon and then a total, like showing the total amount in the cart. So let's use an image source. I have all of my icons pre-downloaded in here. Where is it? Shopping cart. Yeah, shopping cart.png. So if you have any images in your public folder, all you need to do is this slash and then write the name of it. So we have our source of, we also need to give it a size so that it's not huge. So I'll give it a width of 30 and I'll give a height of 30. We also need our display of showing what the total is in the cart. So let's do a typography. Import that in from MUI. And for now, we're just going to give it hard code a 0 because we don't currently have a state set up for total in cart. So let's import our cart into our home. So in our top div here, we're going to also include our cart component. So they're centered, but we could probably give them a little bit of margin between the two of them. So in the cart, we're going to give a margin right of 5 pixels, just to separate them a little bit. Okay, so we have our shopping cart. Now we need to actually have this keep track of, we need a state to keep track of the current amount that's in the cart, like total cost of the cart, and also the items that are in the cart. So an array. So can you guess what we're going to have to do next? We're going to have to create a slice and call it cart slice. So now that we've already created one slice, we can just copy and paste it into the other one. And as soon as you get the hang of like not thinking about them as like, oh, slices, reducers, just break it down into, I have state keeping track of theme and I have state keeping track of cart. It's like a use state, but instead of use state just keeping track of one value, it's like categorizing your states into slices and then keeping track of them all in one file. We can get rid of theme selector for now. Get rid of theme slice for now. So we have our cart slice here. So we need to change all of theme slice to cart slice. I'm going to call the name of it cart, keep initial state the same. This is just the overall state of what each property is. And change cart slice down here. So instead of theme, we're going to keep track of two properties. I'm going to call it total. We're going to initialize it to 0. And we're going to keep track of items. And we're going to initialize it to an empty array. Now we're in our reducers, instead of just one function this time, we're going to have two. So we're going to say update total and update items. Our props are the same, passing in a state coming from here. And we're passing in an action.payload and we're deciding what piece of state we're going to change. So update total is going to change total and it's going to go from state.total plus equals action.payload, but we also have to parse float it. because the action.payload is not going to be a integer, but we also need to do .price because the payload is going to be an object, something like payload will be an object of something like price, X amount, for whatever for, name, it could be shirt, stuff like that. So we need to narrow it down to price. State.total plus equals parse float. Parse float turns string into a integer, but it also allows it for decimal places. So if we just use parse int, it would just convert it to a whole number. But if we're working in a store, there's going to be cents. So we can't just work in round numbers. So we have our update total. We also need our update items. Passing in our state coming from here. Passing in our action. Now we need to choose which property and state to update. So it's going to be state.items equals. It's going to equals an array. We're going to spread out the previous items. And now we're going to add in our last item at the end. So the action.payload, we can place the whole payload in as an element in the array because it's going to contain the necessary information about the items we have for sale. So state.items, all it's doing is it's spreading it. So let's say there's two items within the array. Say this is the items array, and there's two items. I'm not going to put all the props in, but item 1 and item 2. So now we have item 3. We need to pass it in. So it's going to become ... 1, 2, and then we have our comma, we have our 3. So the ... symbolizes the 1 and the 2, or whatever is in the array. Okay, and then you're going to just do a comma and place your payload, your action.payload at the end to insert that element at the end of the array. So this is all set up. What's our next step? Go to the store, import the cart reducer. Now we have another reducer to choose from, so we're going to give it the name, and we're going to connect it up with cart reducer. So now we can use our cart reducer. We can use our use dispatch to call our methods. Use our use dispatch to call our methods, and we can use our use selector to grab these props in state and use them out into our different components. So we can. Oh, I actually forgot one last step. So we need to export out our new methods that we just built there. So we need to export out update items and update totals. So now we can use these methods, and we've already imported that into our store. So let's come back into, get rid of store. Let's come back out into cart. So what do we need to do first? We need to import our two helpers. So use selector and use dispatch. Maybe we won't need to use dispatch in here because all we're doing is keeping track of it. But for now, let's just use const current total. It's going to be equal to use selector. Pass the state. We need to do state dot cart dot total. Cart being the name of the slice that we want to look for, and total being the name of the prop that we're looking for in that slice. So now that we have access to current total, we can come down here into our typography and use our curly braces to tell the JSX that we're going back to JavaScript. Current total, we're going to get a 0, but if we want to use, I want to have it like a $sign current total, but that's going to break it. So what we need to do is we need to build a template string, so put your backticks, $, curly braces to signify a variable name, and give an extra $sign. So now we have our $sign and our total. So now as we update the cart, this will update. So even if we update the cart total in any of our components, it will always have an accurate reading, because there's no dealing with passing props and setting state. You're literally just grabbing it from the library, from the database, the store, and it's always up to date. So now that we have our cart, we can come out of here, and in our home, we're going to build a sidebar component to navigate through our shirts, pants, whatever. So let's build a sidebar component. So RC, is it going to work this time? Okay, so we have our, we need to give our initial div a style, so display flex. Now we need to change the direction to column, so we need them to be stacked on top of each other. And cursor pointer, because it's going to be a list of buttons basically to change the view of which items we're viewing. So we're going to have a number of categories, call them cats. So so each category is going to have two properties. So it's an array full of objects. Each object corresponds to a tile in our sidebar. So the first one's name is going to be shirt. It's going to have a source object for its icon. So polo shirt.png. Next one, name. It's going to be pants. Source object of pants.png. Name, sunglasses. So yeah, I just had the names of my icons already written down there, so I'm just referencing these PNGs here that are in the public directory. So now that if we come down into here, we need to map through our cats array. So cats.map. Map takes two arguments, so the name of the individual object, the individual element that we're looping through, so you need to give it a name. So cat signifies the current stop in our mapping process, so it's going to stop at this cat, move on to the next cat, move on to the next cat, move on to the next cat. Index is just the index, so this is index 0, index 1, index 2, and 3. So it's taking in those two parameters. Now we need to tell it to do something, so it's going to perform an action for each object. So let's let's just do a div. And inside the div, I'm going to display the name. So to reference the name, we're going to just say cat.name. And beside it, we're going to have an image with a source of cat.source. Need to give it a styles so it's not huge. div a key of index so we can get rid of that red mark. So key index, I suppose I should style. So let's give it a display of flex so that they appear side by side, and let's see if we can center them. Line item center. So to display this here, we need to import the sidebar into our home component. And we're going to place it not in our top div, but in our outer div. Alright, so you can see here, but that's not really what I was looking for, so let's go back. So the div itself looks a little bit small, so let's give it a height of 5 EM. Actually 3. Let's give it a border so I can see what I'm working with. And we need to give it a width. Actually, I'm not going to give it a width there. I'm going to give it a width of 100%, but I need to give its parent a fixed width so that it's only 20% of this overall outer div component. So for now, let's go back and fix that. So the sidebar needs to be in its own div. And this div needs to have a width of 20%. All right. So because outer div has currently in display flex, it's displaying its children side by side. Actually, no, sorry. No, never mind, I forgot. It's not. So yeah, we have top div is appearing on top. It has a width of 100%. Then we have sidebar div is appearing right underneath with a width of 20%. So let's just to make sure I have this built out correctly here. This next div here should be is our view. So this should have a width of 80%. Let's give it a border and a width and height so I can see, or a height so that I can see it. So it's appearing right underneath. So the parent component of these two, which is outer div, needs to be placed. This actually, I'm not going to change outer div. I'm going to give it another parent. I'm going to place both of these inside it. And then this div needs to be set into display flex so that they appear side by side instead of on top of each other. So now you can see the red box is taking up 80% and the sidebar is taking up 20%. But they both need to have heights that reach down to the bottom. So this div, I'm going to give it a height of 90%. That's because its parent doesn't have a defined height. So this parent needs to have a defined height in order for us to use a percentage. So let's give that one at 90%. So now we see it's stretching down to almost to the bottom. So let's do 95. A little bit too far. 94.5. I know this isn't how you would do it like on a professional project, but for this one, it's just a tutorial, so I'm just going to get it to fit. So let's get rid of the border. Now let's go back and fix up our sidebar because it looks a bit weird at the moment. So I want to actually change the image to come first and then the typography. we're centering our items or vertically, but we need to give the typography a little margin so that it's not right up against the its icons. So margin left 1, and instead of a border, I think I'd prefer to have a background color that stretches down the whole sidebar. So let's get rid of the border for each one of the elements, and let's just give it an overall background color. So I believe we're going to have to go back to our home, look at the div that's holding the sidebar, because the sidebar itself isn't taking up the entire height. Give it a background color of, give it an off-white color, so 210, 210. So that's not taking up its entire, it's only this, this sidebar div isn't going to 100%. Now it is. All right. So now we have our sidebar component. One last thing we need to do with it, we need to give each div an on-click to set our view. So let's say we click on shirts, we want to set the view to shirts so that our other home component knows that it's time to show our shirts and then our pants, whatever. So we need a view slice. It's another piece of state. We can just copy and paste from our theme slice. I'm going to change all of this to view slice. This reducer's name is going to be view. And its method is it's gonna have a method called change view. So the one property of state that we're going to be keeping track of in view is literally just whether it's pants, shirts, sunglasses, or hats. We're going to initially set it to shirts because that's the first item on the list. And our change view function, all it's going to do is state.view equals action.payload. We're going to export out that function, export out view slice.reducer. What's next on the list? Import it into our store. Wait, that can't be right. Oh yeah, because I gave it I'll just leave it like that for now, even though the I shouldn't be capitalized. But view, so we're going to attach our view reducer to our name view. So now that we have that, where we are going to be setting the view state is going to be in sidebar. So what do we need to do? We need to import our helper, use dispatch. We need to pull it down into our component by saying const dispatch equals use dispatch. And we need to give each div an on-click function. I'm going to call our dispatch there. Change view. Change view is going to update or import from our view slice. So we're going to call dispatch change view. And what's our last step? We need to give an action.payload or just a payload. And what are we going to pass to it? We're going to pass the name of the cat. So cat.name. So that's going to change the view state, and that's going to be accessible to any component in our application so long as we use our use selector to pull it out of the slice and store it into our component. So where do we need to use our view, or where do we need to be aware of what view that we're in? Well, we need to know in home, so let's import selector. Where's use selector coming from? React Redux. Okay, so we need to keep track of we need to give it a variable name, so let's call it current view equals use selector state dot view dot view being the name of the slice, and then the next view being the name of the property. So current view, it should be shirts at the moment. Let's display it over here inside of our 80% width panel here on the right. Just put a p tag, curly braces, and write current view. So it's currently shirts. It will update as we go down and click on the different divs. So we know that's working. So what do we need to do now? We need to have an object with a key of each name of the individual views. So let's say const items. Call it items for sale. And let me just make sure, is that an array? Yeah, so it should be. Yeah, I'll just do it as an array of objects. So category shirts. It's also going to have a property for items. I'm just going to fill this out real quick. What's going on over here? Need to be able to see. Oh, it's because of. Okay, yeah, my computer just really slowed down there, so I had to just wait for it to catch up with me here. So we need to close off that array. So each category is going to have associated with it a list of items. Keep writing hates items. Now within our items, there's going to be a list. There's going to be 2 objects per item. And each item is going to keep track of an individual item for sale. So name, let's give it like t-shirt. Price, and then I have written down the PNGs. I use flat icon for the PNGs. It's probably the best website that I found anyway. So collared shirt, price, $8.99, and then source. Need to have a slash there. slowly filling these in. You can probably fast forward this part if you're watching. But sunglasses, so use Ray-Ban price 55.90, whatever. 55.91 source. Sunglasses.png. What's this one? Louis Vuitton. Louis Vuitton price 81.20. And then this one, sunglasses.png. What is it? Or sunglasses one PNG. Woolly hat price. Yeah, all I could find for that one was a Santa hat. So Santa hat and name. $15.99 for a baseball cap, and then source. Right, so now that we have all of these, we have our items for sale. Each category is an object which contains two properties. Or no, it contains. So each element is assigned to a different category. Within it, it contains an array full of items. So let's come down to, we need to map through the items. So first we need to go items for sale .map. Or actually, I wonder if I should do items for sale .find. So items for sale .find item .category is equal to current view. I don't know what it's complaining about. Do I need to go like that? Alright, so if that find function, basically it just searches for an element that matches the condition that you pass in. So items for sale .find, the condition is item .category has to match the current view. So if the current view is shirts, item .category shirts will match. So it will return this item. So now we need to map through the item. We need to map through items within that item. I know I'm like probably not doing a great job of explaining that, but so items.find item.category equals current view dot map item. I can't call it item again, but I'll call it index. Or I'll call it I, sorry. And for each one, we want to display a paper element from MUI. Import here on top. Yep. I is defined but never used. So within the paper, we're going to give it a couple of typographies. I'm going to say I.name. I.source and I.price. I know it's complaining about something up there, but I'll figure it out in a second. So it's going to also contain I.price. So what is the issue here? sale.find.map's not a function. So it couldn't find items for sale. Maybe there's a problem with how I structured this. So items for sale.find. Current view. Current view is shirts. Oh, because sorry, I need to do .items.map because we're mapping through. We're not mapping. We're mapping through the items array. Okay. So now we have our shirts displaying here, but our PNGs are not showing up because for some reason I wrote it inside a typography instead of an object. So we need to do an image with a source of i.source. And we need to give them a size so that they're not gigantic. Give them 20 pixels each. Actually, I'll give them 50 because we're going to actually make these cards bigger. So they're displaying one on top of each other. So in this div, we need to give it some styles. So we need to do a display flex so that they'll appear side by side. We also need to center, line item center, and justify. Actually, I won't center them on the y-axis. So we're centering them. So we need to style up our paper itself. So we need to give, that SX. So we need to give it, we need to give the margins so they're not right beside each other. We need to have 2 brackets. Let me give it a background color just so I can see what I'm working with. We need to set its height and width. Give it 10 EM. Give it a height of 10. So the cards are about the right size, but we want to center our items within it. So let's get rid of that green color. Come to item name, give that a style, text align center. Do the same for price. I think our image could be a little bit bigger, so let's do 80 and 80. And we need to also center this, so I think it's going to do it with margin 0 auto and then display block. So in our price, we want to have our $sign. We don't want to just have the price showing up like that. So we need to build a string template. Pass our variable into our brackets so that it treats it as a variable, and then add the $sign. We could probably give it a little bit of margin so that's not right up on top. Actually, we'll do it to the icon because it's in the middle. So I'm going to give it margin top of 5 pixels and margin bottom that'll work for now. So we have shorts are not showing up. I wonder what the issue is. Football.png. Oh, because it needs to be football shorts. All right, everything's showing up. So we also need a button for adding items into our cart. So if you remember, we had our two need to import button from MUI up top. So if you remember, we had our two methods for adding items into our cart. That's what this button's job is going to be. Cart. So let's center this button. Margin 0 auto and display block. Add to cart, it needs to have an on click. I'm actually just going to give it add item to cart. And all of a sudden I forgot how to type. So I'm going to define a function up top there, but we need to pass something into our function. We're going to pass the whole item. So we're just going to pass it in like that. So need a function here called add item to cart. It's going to receive our item. And we need to make a call to those two functions that we defined in our cart slice. We can get rid of view slice, get rid of this cart slice. So we have these two functions. We need to import those into our home. We need to also, we have our use selector, but we also need now to import our use dispatch. We need to pull it into our app, so const dispatch equals use dispatch. So now in our add item to cart, we can take advantage of those two functions. So dispatch, update items. We're going to pass our item in as the item.payload. We also need to do another thing. We need to do dispatch, update total, and we need to pass in our item as well. So now, if we come back into our cart slice, both of these functions are going to receive the item as the action.payload. It's going to add the payload.price to total, and it's going to add the entire item onto the end of the state. Let's try it. So we have 1077 and we have, so if we add that, it's giving us a bunch of decimal places. So 26, so it is working. To check that the items are being updated correctly, we're going to pull our items in cart using use selector. State.cart.items. And I believe I can just console log items in cart. So we're going to be looking for line 24. Let's refresh it. Should have an empty array at the moment. All right, empty array line 24. Let's add our t-shirt. Now we have an array of 1 containing a t-shirt, a price. It probably doesn't need the source, but it's all right for now. So we have our items in cart and we have our items, the item total. So we can get rid of our console log. So now that we have access to our items in cart, there should be some kind of display on the button to show us what's in our cart so that we don't keep placing the same items in the cart. So in our button, let's actually, because I'm working with such little space, oh, didn't mean to do that. Let's bring these down to different lines. Keep the SX on the same line. So in our display for the button, for text, we're going to want to put some JavaScript logic in here. So we're going to do it on a conditional rendering. So items in cart dot sum item dot name equals, what do we call it here? I dot name. Yeah, I. So this is going to actually need to do a question mark there. We need to put remove from cart. I'll explain it in a second. Remove from cart, else add to cart. So the items.sum, it's checking if any of the items in the cart matches this condition. So if items.name, we know there's an item in the cart with the name of t-shirt. Does it match the current item that's being processed in the .map function? If it does, this button is going to, if it matches this condition, it's going to display this text. If not, it's going to display add to cart. So we have our remove from cart, but its on click is still just adding the price to the overall total. So we need a new function to remove something from the cart. Remove from cart, state.items. So we're going to filter it out. So we're going to filter it out of our items array. The filter function it'll take out any item that it will filter out any item that matches this condition. Or sorry, again, I have it backwards. So if item.name does not match the name that we're passing into the function, it will allow it to pass through the filter. So the only items that will stay in the state of items.state are the ones that can pass through this filter. So if its name does not match the action payload name that we're passing in on our remove item button. So that's one thing we're doing, we're moving the items, moving it from items. We also need to remove it from total. So state.total minus equals parse float. Action.payload. Price. So we're going to remove the price off the top of the total. I imported something weird there. Alright, so minus equals parse float. So that should be working. We need to export this function, remove from cart. We need to bring it into our home. And we need a function here. Remove item from cart. It's going to receive an item. And it's going to call our dispatch remove from cart, and we're going to give it the item as the payload. So it's saying it's assigned a value but never used. So that's because we need to call it in this button. So similar to what we did here, our on click is going to receive a similar logic condition here. So we need to do items on click. I think I do it here. Yeah, items in cart dot sum item dot name equals I dot name. So if it meets this condition, we're going to call our remove from cart and give it I. Else, we're going to let it add item to the cart. So let's refresh this. We're going to add our 1599 t-shirt. We're going to click remove from cart. It didn't work. Items in cart.sum item. That does seem correct. So let's remove item from cart. What did I not? Oh, because I need to write remove item from cart. Now it should work. Let's refresh it. Add our 1599. Remove from cart. So yeah, it removed it from the cart. Probably the wait, what just happened there? Remove it from cart. So it's not being removed from the items, it looks like. So let's console log out our items in cart. Let's refresh it. Let's add our t-shirt. So we have our one t-shirt in remove it from cart. So it's not removing from the cart.items. Okay, so dispatch remove from cart. Let's follow it back. Remove from cart here. State.items.filter. Item.name does not equal action.payload.name. So does item.name does not match action.payload.name. Oh, because sorry about that. It's because I actually need to set it. So all I'm doing there is just creating a shadow copy. So I need to do state.items equals state.items.filter. So the dot filter is going to return a new array containing only the matching elements that match the criteria, but it was never setting it to state.items. So you need to do state.items equals state.items.filter. Sorry about that. So let's refresh it. Let's check it one more time, remove from cart, and now it is working fine. So the last thing we need to do is, let me just check my time here. So the last thing we need to do is update our theme selector, because right now all it is, it's changing the theme string just from light to dark. So we need another component here called color scheme. And inside our color scheme, we can import the color scheme into our different components, and inside it, it's going to have two objects corresponding to, I wonder what's the right way to set this up. So if we just do dark like that, because I think I have an extra object there. So we can just do light and dark like that. So when we import, let's say we import color scheme, and our current theme is dark. So we import our color scheme and our current theme is dark. So when we're just giving our components their styling, so let's say div and then style like this. Say we want to do color. We're going to say color scheme because we can access it once we import it into our component. Color scheme, then you give it its property name. But you're not going to manually type it in. You're going to pass in current theme because we can keep track of that in each one of our components. So that then it's going to say, okay, current theme dark. So we're looking at these components or these props. Going to pick out which prop you want out. So color, so let's say this has a color component for text. Let's say it has a background color and so on. So that's how you're going to use color scheme to change your theme. So let's fill this out real quick. So let's think it through. So if we have a dark theme, we want color of our text to be white. We want our background color to, this background color is corresponding to this panel on the right side here. So let's give it a RGB of a darkish but not too dark color. We need a card PG color. So background color for our card. I'm going to give that an RGB of a slightly darker color. 20. Need our sidebar. Let's just call it bar BG because I'm going to use it for sidebar on top. So bar BG, and we're going to give that a 2020 as well. Then for our light theme, color is going to be black. Background color of our right side panel is going to be RGB. I might just give it 250, like almost white. RBG color, that's going to be RGB, an off-white color. So like 220 maybe. And then we use the same color for both on that one. So RBG is going to have an RGB of 220, 220 and 220. So now we have basically our two components that is going to need these. So let's import it into home. Color scheme from color scheme. Do we have our current theme yet in this component? So let's do const current theme to pull the theme into our home component. Use selector. Can you guess what I'm going to type in? So it's state.theme. Oh, what the hell? State.theme. The name of the slice .theme. Now we have access to our theme, whatever the state is in the back. So what items? So we have our sidebar here. So this background color needs to be updated to color scheme, current theme, dot bar BG. That's what I call it. So I guess we're in dark theme now. So if we go back to light, we can see it again. So we also need to go into our, actually I'll just do this whole component first. So this 80% side panel, this needs to have a background. So background color. Same exact thing, color scheme. I just imported something weird up top. I'm gonna have to go back and see what that is here now in a second. Color scheme dot BG color, I believe. So we also need to give it to our cards. RGB color. And we just need to do the top div as well, give it the proper background color. Class name. So let's just give this a style background color. Scheme. Current theme. Why is that not updating? Because I had an important statement there. So let's get rid of, yep, so everything is dark, but now we need to update the different colors because they need to have if it's in dark theme, they need to have a white text. So let's start with our cards, typography, and our, yep. So color. I can just copy that and give it to the next one down below. We still can't. So let's go into our sidebar now and fix the text over there. So do we have our current, we need to get our current theme out of our store. State.theme.theme. And in our cat.names, need to import the color scheme. The only thing I won't be able to change is the icon colors because they're set. I just downloaded them as is. So is that actually working? All right. And we need to do it on our shopping cart, even though that's an icon, so I don't know if I'll be able to change that, the color of that one. Let's give it a try real quick. So our shopping cart, we can actually just copy this. Not cart size. Cart.jx, get rid of color scheme, get rid of store. Current theme. We also need to import our color scheme. And on our typography for current total, let's give it a color. Let's see if it works. All right, so there you have it. It's not the best application. Like I could go into removing the 2 decimal places and stuff, even though that time it did work. But as you can see, you got your light theme. You can remove things from the cart. As you navigate through the different views, the state is always being kept track of, no matter how many items you add. So that's just a quick tutorial on, well, maybe that wasn't that quick actually, but use Redux, geez, I can't even think. Hope you learned something from the video. If you have any questions or comments, please leave them down below, and hope you see you in the next video.